they make things sound washy to me, and I don't like that. I've always been a clarity guy. Sometimes I mix very dynamic songs in reverse, or I decide, okay, the last chorus is the loudest thing. I always find that when you reamp something, that the initial playing, the initial dynamic between the player and the amp, it gets lost. I'm not a huge parallel compression kind of guy. I think it works better with...
This episode is brought to you by Baby Audio. Today I'm joined by producer, mixer, and songwriter Ulrich Wild, known for his work with Pantera, Deftones, White Zombie, and Fu Manchu. We dive into working with tape, recording vocals, his experience with Pantera, and much more. Hi Ulrich, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Do you miss recording or mixing on tape?
No, not at all. No, I'm serious. I did, and it was about 2006, in the summer of 2006, I said, I will never mix in the box. And by December 2006, I was mixing in the box exclusively. There was a brief time period of kind of doing the hybrid thing. But for me, and I think that works for some people, I think that's kind of fun. But for me, it did not work at all because I had a 2-year-old who really liked to come to the studio and change knobs, because that's when it started working at home. And so resetting up the mixes and changing, like documenting and all that stuff, it just was not a good lifestyle choice for me at that point. And so I quickly moved into the box. And frankly, the thing was, as much as the hybrid thing was kind of fun, mostly it's kind of a switch that got flicked in my brain. Like, I was doing analog and now I'm doing digital, as opposed to like straddling the two worlds and trying to make it work, because they're very, very different beasts, you know? And as you know, but you know, like the complaint was always like, well, digital sounds too brittle, and you know, like I can totally tell if it's digital or not. It's like, well, yes, the one with the hiss is the tape. I mean, how hard is it to tell? You know, it's like you're a genius. But you know, the tape is a very imperfect medium, just like I guess digital is an imperfect medium, and nothing's perfect out in the world, right? And so all their recording techniques were geared towards tape. You know, like they had slow, transient response, so it would shave off all these, you know, the snare attacks and make it sound fat. The high end was literally left on the tape heads, like when you clean the tape heads, like those are your cymbals. You know what I mean? So like you would goose all this extra 10K to tape because you knew it was A, gonna be shaved off, and B, you had this noise floor, this hiss from tape. So if in mixing you had to boost it, you would boost the hiss, but if you had to attenuate it, you would get rid of some of the hiss, right? So you kind of think your approach to mixing, or you know, like experience kind of taught you how to handle some of this stuff. And so you apply those same recording techniques to digital, and of course it sounds bright because it doesn't shave it off, right? So don't do that. Like, don't like goose all this high end into digital if you're not going to need it. So you know, imagine if you started out with digital and you had everything sounding good, and for you know, we're doing it for 30 years, whatever, and somebody shows up with tape and is like, check out this tape, this is awesome. And you go like, dude, this sounds muddy and hissy and it's like a bias noise and it's wows and flutters. This is terrible. What are you talking about? So, you know, no, I don't miss it. I think that's the short answer is no, I don't miss it.
And do you use tape plugins when you're mixing?
No.
No.
I think they make things sound washy to me, and I don't like that. I'm like, I've always been a clarity guy, and so digital always helped with that. And tape was always uh, it was always harder to make things sound clearer than they were.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's easier on digital. We have other problems with digital, sounded like uh, too attacky and too transient and everything. So there's a lot of plugins I use that help with that, but none of them are like tape saturation plugins or things like that. So
Mm-hmm. Do you think there are moments during a mix when it's actually helpful to work a track in solo?
yeah, all the time, just not always. It's I The way I mix is kind of like an eagle approach. Like you just kind of circle the mix, and just like you kind of pick at things,
Mm-hmm.
so at first it's kind of all faders up, and find out what the song is, and just kind of like play through it like hundreds of times or whatever, and just keep like, okay, where's the bass, okay, where's the guitars, where's the keyboards, where's the vocals, what's like what's driving the song, what's kind of get the feel for it, especially if you've never heard it before. If you're working on a record, obviously it's a bit different, but you get this new song and you go like, all right, what's going on with this thing? And then it was like, well, I didn't hear this track in the rough mix. I was like, well, that's kind of suspect or whatever. um and then at that point, go like, all right, this sounds really murky. Let's see what's causing the murk. And then you go in and you kind of solo that, and you go like, all right, we can, the bass is really cloudy down here, and just kind of carve out some space for kicking low end of the guitars or whatever. You just kind of move your way around. It's never like, okay, this guitar sounds perfect, I'm going to build everything around it. It's like that can happen, but usually doesn't. Um, so it's always kind of like, okay, what's wrong? Or why is it not right yet? And then, okay, maybe the vocals are too loud, or maybe they're too bright, or the cymbals, or I can't hear them anymore because everything else came up, or whatever. It's just kind of this constant massaging of things
Mm-hmm.
until you give up and and think it's right.
Mm-hmm. And what techniques come to mind when you want to make the chorus sound huge and really explode?
Well, take everything down before it. Um, that's sometimes I mix very dynamic songs in reverse,
Mm-hmm.
where or I decide, okay, the last chorus is the loudest thing, especially if we start out with like, a piano and a vocal, and it ends up with like, an orchestra and everybody else in there. Um, and then I just go and mix the last biggest section first, and work my way backwards into the dynamics of that.
I've always been a big fan of your drum sounds. How do you get the snare to sound so alive in your mixes? Because usually with all the guitar and bass distortion, the snare tends to sound dull. But in your mixes, that you can hear the thump, the attack, the room, the tone. So how do you achieve that?
It's mostly just EQ and compression, lots of compression, and just really very aggressive EQing. Um, it's not unheard of for me to have 12 dB at 10K plus 15 dB at 7K, and just
Mm-hmm.
just getting that sizzle, that crack in there. But then double compressing the hell out of it with a usually my the SSL plugin, the
Mm-hmm.
4000 one from Waves, the original one. I'll do two instances of it. In the first instance, we'll have the slow setting on the compressor, and the second one will have the fast setting on the compressor. Um, and usually gets all the hits, um, fairly consistent. And the fast one will shave off that transient that's going to be overbearing at some point. Um, Also, like the was it the sound leveler, a drum leveler, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Drum leveler, yeah.
Yeah, that helps with somebody who's kind of inconsistent with his hits. But rather than bringing all the hits up that are not loud enough, I tend to bring the loudest ones down,
Mm-hmm.
um, just because it seems to like behave better with bleed and stuff like that.
Have you tried Baby Audio's plugins? They're designed to inspire creativity and enhance your music production experience. From their Crystalline River plugin, offering ultra clean reflex free of metallic artifacts, to Spaced Out, a hybrid reverb and delay workstation that combines over 50 individual effects. Baby Audio provides tools that can transform your sound. Right now, you can get an exclusive discount on all their plugins. Just use the code Agartha15 at checkout. Don't miss out. Click the link in the description and elevate your music today. Would you ever use parallel compression or distortion on the snare?
I have, but it's not my go-to. Like I'm not a huge parallel compression kind of guy. Sometimes I try. Like I think it would be. I think it works better with slower material. Um, like more like rock oriented stuff, but like the fast metal stuff. But like all the room stuff starts to get in the way pretty quickly. And so parallel compression, like the New York style compression that they call it. I have it set up as a thing that I use sometimes, but it's not a huge go-to thing for me.
hmm And how do you make sure that the snare doesn't interfere with the vocal?
You know, that is it's just one of those mixing things. It's part of that massaging things until it's right. Because it's not just about the snare and the vocal, it's about the guitars and the rest of the drums and really the attack of the bass. And I really always look at it as like three layered or a three-tiered mix. And you have the low end and the mids and the highs, obviously. Mansplaining stuff here, um, but it really comes down to like the crunch of the guitars,
hmm
the main sound, the main tone of the voice, and the snare. They're all sitting in the same place, and the sizzle of the guitars and the sizzle of the cymbals and the sibilance of the vocals are all like up on top, right? And the bass, the low end of the guitars and the mids of the bass and the kick drum, they're fighting for space. So it really comes down to um, carving out the portion of the frequencies from each track that don't do anything for me. So there's always about clearing out murkiness of stuff. Like guitars will have, and it's always a different place. You can't say like, oh, always take a 800 hertz, because it's never that. It just
hmm
depends on the riff and the guitar and the tone and the player and the song and the key. And so it's all, but there's always a murky spot somewhere. And you start carving that out, and sometimes quite aggressively, because it's just too much. Like I need more clarity, I need more tone, I need more. I just need that rumble in there, and you find the rumble and the it's just the stuff that's not pleasing somehow or another. It can be like a certain attack frequency on the guitars. So it's just like that's really stepping in the like you know what I mean? It's like there's a better thing there. I can use that to have space for the vocals and have the crunch of guitars move up a little bit and make space for the vocals that way. Um, Same thing with the snare, like depending on the snares, how the snare's tuned and what kind of reverb we're going to end up using for it or whatever. There's always these little sections that like one pokes through here, the other one pokes through there, and both of them seem like they're the loudest thing. That's kind of like the idea. The perfect mix really is when you go like, oh man, that snare is like the loudest thing in the mix, and you listen to it like, no, it's the vocals, and you're like, no, it's the guitars. Like,
Uh-huh.
oh, and then it was like, that's perfect, because like everybody, like when you listen to it, like your favorite thing pops through.
Cool. Talking about drums, I need to ask you this. How were the drums recorded for Pantera's album, The Greatest Southern Trendkill?
Sun Tranquil. Well, they recorded it in their studio, Jason studio, and there wasn't really anything out of the ordinary about tracking it. Vinny had that that very distinct kick drum sound,
Mm-hmm.
and just the way he had his drums tuned, and the way he had that 414, I believe, mounted on the inside. There's people that are probably better asked than me, even though I was there. But really, it's just a mic and a preamp and tuning the drums. I mean, they're like ultimately there wasn't like anything terribly out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a big drum room or anything like that.
Uh-huh. And how much editing was done on the drums for that album?
Some more punching in than editing,
Oh,
really.
okay.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
there's some that like not there wasn't like any like tightening kind of editing. We would take sections of like, oh, we like that take and put them together, because the drums were recorded on analog,
Mm-hmm.
and we spliced that by hand back in the day. And so we would sometimes the punching in would work uh, in that we would take a submix of the performance that he had just played and put it on a new piece of tape, and then he would play along to that, and then just keep going once that submix drops off, and then we would use that take and splice it onto the previous take that we wanted it from, or whatever, just so you would have the tempo down and everything, because all that stuff was I don't even know it was done to click at all. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. So,
Like,
so were they playing all together?
they were playing together, yeah. Not always for everything, but yeah, they were jamming.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And what was Phil's approach to recording vocals? Consider how he sings. I guess he couldn't do long sessions. I don't know. So how did he handle that?
Well, I have to tell you this, that I wasn't there for the vocals, because
Oh, okay.
Terry was doing vocals with Phil in New Orleans
Uh-huh.
while I was wrapping up guitars at the time. But from what I was told, Phil would come in with everything pretty much laid out, and he would just knock it out and be done with it. And with his 58 in the control room, speakers up, I can go for it and lay it down and knock it out.
And most singers aren't used to recording in the studio. They need to move, I don't know, move their arm, express themselves. So they're more familiar performing live, I guess. So how important is a singer posture during a recording session for achieving a great performance?
Well, the body is the singer's instrument, so he just has to, or she, the singers, they just have to do what they need to do to get it done. If they want to sit, if they want to stand, if they want to run around, if they want to go jogging and do it, well, I'll find the way to record them in their way that makes them, most comfortable. A lot of guys like, do this hunched over thing and get pressure that way and from their diaphragm into their system. Let them do it. You want to do
Mm-hmm.
handheld, go handheld. If I can fake a good sound, but I can't fake a good performance. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's always more important. Or
Sorry.
just to have them comfortable and be able to give that performance that they need to give, that they want to give.
Mm-hmm. What other things do you like to do to help the singer feel comfortable in the studio?
Oh, that just depends on the singer. I mean, some people really need to be coached and coaxed and treated with kid gloves, and other ones need to be beaten up. Well, not physically, but like do it again, do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
hit that pitch. Give me some excitement in there, whatever, and just really go after them. And other ones, um, they have it kind of figured out, and they just need somebody to be patient with them, and uh, we're we're non-judgmental in a way, in that like you like we like there's no bad things that happen, because bad, quote unquote, bad things can lead to good accidents that
Mm-hmm.
can be awesome. What I mean? So it's just obviously we judge it because we want it to be good, and we decide if something's good, so that's obviously judging. But um You're not judging somebody's mistakes or, like making fun of people or anything like that. So we're just kind of, we're, it's kind of like a very laissez-faire attitude about everything, especially since, we're not beholden to time the same way here and where I'm working at my place. So like if we go a day over or something, it's not that big of a deal. Another thing is, give it a couple of shots. And if it's not working out, maybe today's not the day for that song,
Mm-hmm.
and try something else. Or um, oftentimes, work out things as we go on the fly. Um, Especially songs that aren't completely finished yet or still kind of, being played around with. Um, it's nice to lay some stuff down and sit with it and come back the next day and see if we still like it, like this low pressure, like a low pressure environment, I think helps them, or they don't have to like watch the clock and go, oh, I gotta get this done, I gotta get done right now. Otherwise it's, um, another thing that I like doing in general when I record a whole album is making sure that the singer does have enough time to do all those things, which means that we start vocals fairly early in the process.
Mm-hmm.
The I like having everybody. And this is an ideal situation. Sometimes, obviously, schedules don't allow for stuff, but ideally, we knock out the drums and do have everybody like agree on the songs and the structures and everything, and knock out the drums, and then we do bass and guitars. But maybe a couple of days of tracking bass and guitars to the point where we have some nearly completed songs. And then I like to switch over to doing a little bit of work with every band member every day. So we'll do like, let's say one guy is coming in and does bass in the morning. The guy comes in and does vocals in the afternoon. And the next guy comes in and does guitars in the evening. And so basically doing about a song's worth of work every day, but it could be different songs that we're working on. And that allows for the singer to start singing early on and have plenty of time to have a bad day, not feel good physically, run up against like an uninspiring performance and redo it the next day, and just not run out of time and be stuck with and wearing out the voice. That's
Mm-hmm.
a whole other thing. Some of these guys are very intense about singing. Um, and so I don't, and then the headspace for a song too. Like some of that stuff is very emotional and very personal. So switching from one song to another is very difficult sometimes. So just doing one song a day helps with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Um, the one thing real quick is a lot of guys think that they ought to knock out 3 songs a day, but so we're singing for, even if we do an hour and a half on one song at 100%, like this is not, a show where you can kind of like get the microphone out to the audience or like skip a line, or you know what I mean, or whatever. Not that they're not putting in 100% on the show, but it's a little different because the microscope of the vocal of the studios in there. And so doing an hour and a half of singing for one song, that's a show. You know what I mean? And do you really want to do 2, 3 shows in a row? Like,
No.
no, let's like save that for the next day. Let's not wear you out and come back at 100% the next day. I can't do 95 or 90% for the song 2 or 3, you know?
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's important for the singer to memorize the lyrics before recording, so they can focus on the emotion rather than reading?
Yeah, there's definitely truth to that. A lot of second, third, fourth records, that isn't necessarily possible immediately because the songs are still being written and adjusted in the studio. But there is a progress, and I call it like a peak performance curve, where somebody comes in, then they start singing the song and or the verses, of course, whatever. And in the beginning, they're kind of learning the part or getting used to the headphones or the situation. And at some point, they have like their best performance, and then we keep going for a little bit more just to make sure that it was the best performance, and then we calm things together. And but that process could be like the best performance could be like take one or two, or it could be take 30 or 40 because we're still working
Mm.
out lyrics or whatever, or still trying things and just not happy with stuff. So knowing when that peak performance was is sometimes tricky, but we seem to be doing okay figuring it out.
Hmm. And what do you do when a singer isn't getting the result that they want and start to feel frustrated?
Well, that depends again on the singer, and how many songs deep we are, and what the reason is why they can't get it. Like if they just got bad news or something, then we just go like, dude, fucking go deal with whatever you got going on. Or if they are just not happy with the parts they wrote, it's like, let's fucking sit down and rewrite this thing. Or um, again, it's 80% of my job as a producer is figuring out what the how to help. Just sometimes it's just me lending an ear. Otherwise, it's ordering pizza or like watching somebody's dog, or all that stuff comes is part of it. And then obviously it's the judging of the songs and performances. um but yeah, it just depends. You just help. It's just helping, helping people.
I heard in an interview that you like to double compress vocals when you're tracking. What do you do it, and how exactly do you approach it?
I do double compressed vocals. I'm not really set on compressors all that much, but like right now, I'm using Aphex Expressor and a DBX 160X
Hmm.
as my two main ones. But I've been using 1176s or whatever. It's usually one of them. One of them is kind of fast and just hits all like the explosive stuff. Not the explosives, but like the hard hitting words or whatever. And then another one to more level it out. And then and so we're talking between 3 to 10 dB on each compressor. Um, and then depending on what kind of mix I'm going after, I'm going to double, triple compress again in the mix. Like this is, I mean, we're talking heavy compression sometimes. Um, just because like you're up against so much noise, with the vocal, like you have 2, 4, 6, 8. Sorry, you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 guitar tracks and
Hmm.
fucking 10 drum tracks and samples and keyboards and it's just like you need to have a fighting chance with the vocal.
Hmm. And do you like to use EQ while recording, or do you prefer to change the mic if the tone doesn't suit the singer?
It starts with the mic, but it's the the most important part of the mic selection is that the singer's happy. And again, it's like if you have a guy who's only ever used handhelds, and that's how he gets his performance. If you put him in front of one of those big mics, you know,
Hmm.
chances are it's not going to be as vibey for him. So, I'll use, you know, hopefully a condenser handheld, um, that he'll be happy with, or they'll be happy with, and just go from there, and it's like the kinds of records that I make are not pristine hi-fi records in that sense. Like we're not recording Celine Dion's breath. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? we're screaming, or we're like, we're singing, but it's intense. This is uh, oftentimes distorted, and like it's a whole different world from jazz.
Hmm. Do you ever use distortion vocals?
Yeah, sure. Not usually while tracking.
Hmm.
It's more kind of like something we put on afterwards, but we sometimes I have the preamp set that the softer vocals are clean, but then when they go into more of a screamy thing, it starts clipping the preamps, and it gets some distortion that way. Do that sometimes. That's kind of fun. Um, but occasionally uh, we'll have some effects that are important, and we'll track into the effects. We might not necessarily record the effects,
Hmm.
or maybe we'll record the effects and the dry signal. But you like you perform differently when the effect is influencing your performance, right? And so that is a cool thing to do, because like as I said, like the trail of like the weird distortion makes you do a certain thing with your voice to like follow that or whatever it is. And so that's a fun thing to do, and important because it'll become unique that way, and it's also part of that the initial question that you had about why do records sound so different from the 90s and from here, is because back then we were forced to do those things as opposed to slapping a plug-in on something afterwards. um, and so that decision was made earlier on, or on the fly, and just embedded and committed. um, and yeah, I mean, that is really part of a guitar tracking philosophy as well. um there's a lot of people that do the reamping thing,
Hmm.
and while that is a good option and solution for certain things, I always find that when you reamp something, that the initial dynamic between the player and the amp gets lost, because like the amp reacts to your playing, and you in turn react again to the amp's reaction to you, right? And so when you then just take that DI and slap a reamp or plug in across it or whatever, something goes away. That's really missing. There's an identity, a personality that it's still good, but there's like just this a little bit of fairy dust that goes missing. And so I always ask everybody to send me the original track that the original sound, even if they want me to reamp it. I always ask them to send that original thing along with, because it just, there's always like a little bit of magic to that.
Hmm. Now I have a couple of questions from our audience for you. And the first one
Mm-hmm.
is, how do you feel about album remastering? Do you think it adds value, or can it sometimes take away from the original?
um it depends on how bad the mastering job was initially. um you know it can add. It can add. It just depends on the situation. Again, like I'm always wishy-washy with my answers, huh? But it just really depends on if somebody does a good job, and um, like we know more now than we did before, so maybe it is better, maybe it isn't, and that's why the original is probably still there. You can listen to that one if you don't like the new one. You know,
Hmm.
Somebody liked the new one, I guess, so that's why they put it out. It's there's enough for everyone to go around. Different strokes for different folks.
Hmm. What impressed you about Terry Date when you first started working with him? What sets him apart from other producers?
Well, Terry Date, he is a legend. I was so fortunate to work with him. The very first time we met was during that Fishbone record, "Give a Monkey a Brain, and he'll swear he's the center of the universe." and I was just a mere assistant at One on One, and
Mm-hmm.
I he had his hands full getting that record done, and I was just happy to be there helping him out. Um, he like his approach uh, to getting sounds is just really cool. Like the way he listens, I learned how to listen from him, how to listen to low end, and you know, just shaping the tones. Um, he really was very formative with that, and then having had the chance to like be his right hand and really witness how he was you know going about this whole production of records. He had very much like a let the band do their thing and vibe about everything, and I think uh, that's really important. And he was always about you know helping the artist, and I think I learned all that from him. Like I know there's a lot of producers out there that are kind of like dictators or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he certainly is not that. He is very much like getting everybody in a good spot and helping them make the best record they can make. And I think that attitude still carries over with me now. So trying trying to trying to step into a little bit of those shoes, but I don't know. Maybe one day I'll.
Aside from his talent, what do you remember doing to achieve Dimebag Darrell's signature sound?
Well, it's all the hands. I mean, literally all the. I mean, it's literally the player that makes the sound. You could put any person onto a Dime's rig, and it would never sound like Dime. And conversely, you could put him on any other rig, and it'll always sound like Dime. He had plenty of, he did that. I mean, there's plenty of people who have gone through his sounds and his setups and everything. But most signature wise is that MXR flanger that he had at a stationary position, that Randall solid state head for the tightness of the low end. And then the rest, it's just the hands. It's just the tightness of the playing, and like it's like 80% of the guitar sound is the pick. Like it's like how you hit the string and how you work those strings.
Mm-hmm. And what's your preferred way to record guitars these days?
I don't know. Well, you know, the one of my main things is to start with the equipment that the band has or the guitarist has or the band in general,
Mm-hmm.
because they have worked themselves into a sound, into an identity, and I want to start with that. And whatever that may be, some people are like plug-in guys, some people are full-on amp guys, Kemper guys. Um, it doesn't much make a difference to me as long as they have a sound they like and I'm agreeing with it. And if we don't like a sound, then we'll start exploring further. Not that we don't explore, starting with their stuff, but if we come to a point, it's like, yeah, this is not working, um, or they decide from the get go that they want to try something new, then all bets are off. We'll just fucking start plugging shit in left and right and see what goes. What's available. What have we tried yet? What's really crazy idea? What could be fun? Just anything really goes.
Mm-hmm. And how do you handle the bass when the guitars have a lot of low end?
Turn it off. No, that is always the thing. That whole low end. You just have to make space. There is room in the guitar sound to carve out and make space for the bass, and there's room in the bass to carve out to make space for the guitars, and they just have to kind of poke through in different places. And sometimes the bass is a lot higher than the guitars.
Hmm.
Um, that can also be the case. It just depends on the band, but yeah, it's just part of the um, you know getting that kick drum and the low end from the rumble from the guitars and the bass just dialed in, and EQ it out and compress it. Um, it's one of those eagle things. You just gotta keep circling it until it's sounding right.
Hmm. Ulrich, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. So thank you once again.
Well, thank you for having me.